In this video, we will focus on the kidneys and their role within the human body. The kidneys are located in the back of the abdominal cavity, on either side of the spine, just below the rib cage. Each kidney is about the size of a fist and is protected by ribs, fat, and muscle. Their placement allows them to filter blood from the renal arteries and return filtered blood via the renal veins, while producing urine that drains into the ureters, leading to the bladder. Kidneys have two key functions, which are osmoregulation and excretion. These functions are essential for maintaining homeostasis, or internal balance in the body. Excretion is the removal of toxic waste products of metabolism from the body. For example, nitrogen-containing compounds are produced when excess amino acids are broken down. They become toxic if they accumulate in the body, so they must be excreted. In mammals, including humans, the main nitrogenous waste product is urea. Osmoregulation, on the other hand, is about water balance. Specifically, it's the regulation of osmotic concentration in body fluids, such as solutes like salts from ions like sodium, potassium, chlorine, and calcium. Osmotic concentration is measured in osmoles per liter, or OSMOL\L. The kidneys help maintain solute concentration throughout the body, which in turn helps control the relative amounts of water and pressure inside of cells. Recall, water will move to where there is a higher solute concentration, which can then change the relative pressures of cells compared to their surroundings. The kidneys play a central role in both functions of excretion and osmoregulation. It filters blood, reabsorbs what is needed, and eliminates excess water and waste as urine. Kidneys are made up of unique functioning units called nephrons. Within each kidney, you will find millions of nephrons that allow it to perform its crucial role for the body. This is what a single nephron looks like. It works through three key stages, which are ultrafiltration, reabsorption, and finally osmoregulation. Ultrafiltration is the first stage in the production of urine. It is carried out by the glomerulus located inside the Bowman's capsule. The glomerulus is a dense ball-shaped network of capillaries with fenestrated walls. Fenestrated means it is porous. Blood enters into the glomerulus at a very high pressure. This is because the incoming blood vessel, called the afferent arteriole, is much wider than the blood vessel through which it will leave, called the efferent arteriole. This creates a bottleneck effect. More blood enters than can easily leave. This pressure is essential for forcing small solutes like glucose, salt, and urea through the capillary walls and the basement membrane into the Bowman's capsule. This process is ultrafiltration. Something to note is that large molecules like proteins and blood cells remain in the capillaries. They are too large to pass through the pores in the capillary walls. Here is the Bowman's capsule. It is a cup-shaped structure that surrounds the glomerulus. Its inner wall is highly porous, which allows it to collect fluid filtered from the blood. This fluid is called filtrate. Its outer wall is an impermeable layer of cells that ensures all of the filtrate flows into the next part of the nephron, the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT for short. The proximal convoluted tubule plays an important role in the second stage, reabsorption. It reabsorbs useful substances such as glucose, amino acids, and some of the water and ions through selective reabsorption. The convolutions, or the long twisting tubes, increase the length of this part of the nephron, so the filtrate takes longer to flow through it. This allows more reabsorption of substances the body needs to retain. The PCT reabsorbs about 80% of this filtrate back into the bloodstream through active and passive transport processes. Notice surrounding the PCT is a network of capillaries, or very thin blood vessels. These allow substances to be reabsorbed directly into the bloodstream. This close contact allows for efficient exchange between the nephron and blood, ensuring that essential substances return to circulation. Sodium ions are reabsorbed via active transport with protein pumps. Chlorine ions will then follow by diffusion, because of the electrical gradient created by the pumping of sodium. Glucose moves via co-transport with sodium, which is considered an active transport process, and eventually via facilitated diffusion, moving through glucose channel proteins. To review how the sodium-glucose co-transporter works, review the D3.3 HL video. Water flows passively by osmosis due to osmotic concentrations created by the movement of solutes. The movement of sodium creates a high solute concentration outside the PCT, and water will follow. The PCT is where most reabsorption occurs. While toxins and unwanted solutes remain in the filtrate, valuable molecules are returned to the blood, helping the body conserve resources while still excreting waste. The filtrate continues its path, moving from the PCT into the Loop of Henle, a U-shaped portion of the nephron. This is where the third and final stage will take place, osmoregulation. Let's take a closer look at the overall structure of the kidney. There are three main parts of the kidney you should be familiar with. We have the cortex, the medulla, and the renal pelvis. The cortex is the outer region of the kidney. It contains the glomeruli and Bowman's capsules, where filtration of blood occurs. The proximal convoluted tubules are also found here, where selective reabsorption takes place, as discussed in the previous slide. The medulla is the inner region of the kidney, arranged in pyramid-shaped structures seen here. This is where the loops of Henle and collecting ducts are found. Within these loops, we have the descending limb and the ascending limb. Descending means to move downward, while ascending means to move upward. It is here in the descending and ascending limbs of the loop of Henle where water and salts are reabsorbed to help the body conserve water. Here's how it happens. As the filtrate moves through the descending limb of the loop of Henle, water is going to move via osmosis out of the loop and into the medulla. The medulla is very salty, so water will move to where there is a higher concentration of solute. The medulla is kept very salty thanks to the action of the ascending limb, which we'll get to next. The descending limb is highly permeable to water, but not to ions, which helps facilitate this process. The filtrate is now very concentrated. Recall ions such as sodium and chlorine and other molecules such as glucose and water have already been selectively reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. Now we have even more water being reabsorbed or moving out of the filtrate. As the filtrate continues its path up the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, sodium ions are actively pumped out. This requires a lot of ATP. Which organelle would you expect to find to help produce this needed ATP? That's right, the mitochondria. The tissue in this area, therefore, contains many mitochondria to produce the ATP needed for this active transport. The ascending limb is impermeable to water, so any water in the filtrate now will remain there until the final movement of the filtrate into the collecting duct. The sodium ions that were pumped out of the ascending limb into the medulla help keep the medulla salty or with a high solute concentration. This high solute concentration is what helps move water out of the filtrate in the descending limb and into the medulla. As the filtrate continues its path, it will move into the distal convoluted tubule and finally into the collecting duct. What still remains in the filtrate at this point? We have urea, the nitrogenous waste the body needs to excrete, some ions such as sodium and chlorine, and other small amounts of waste products. Keep in mind the amount of salts and water that remain in the filtrate will depend on the body conditions. The kidney is helping to maintain homeostasis. This means the kidneys maintain the balance of water and solute concentrations in the body fluids to keep them within a narrow, healthy range. If a person has consumed a lot of water or has a lot of salts in the blood, the kidney is going to help excrete those. But if the reverse is true and there is low water or low salts in the blood, the kidney can help maintain these levels by ensuring they are reabsorbed. Osmoregulation will continue with water reabsorption in the collecting ducts. The antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, plays a key role in this process. It is produced by the hypothalamus and released by the posterior pituitary gland. It acts on the collecting ducts in the kidney to regulate water balance. The collecting duct is the last structure of the nephron through which the filtrate will pass before moving into the renal pelvis, being channeled into the ureter, and eventually to the bladder for removal. So how does ADH work? Consider with me for a moment the color of your urine. Have you ever noticed that sometimes your urine is more yellow or darker in color? Have there been times when it looks more pale or even colorless, like water? ADH is responsible for these changes. Receptors in the hypothalamus monitor the osmotic concentration of the blood or its level of solutes. If blood becomes too concentrated when a person is dehydrated, for example, these receptors trigger the release of ADH. The ADH binds to the receptors in the cells of the collecting duct, which causes aquaporins to be inserted into the cell membranes of the collecting duct, as seen in this diagram. With more aquaporins present, more water is reabsorbed from the filtrate into the surrounding tissue and blood. The result is less water being lost in the urine. The urine will be more concentrated or darker in color, and the blood osmolarity will decrease and return to normal. What happens if the opposite is true? If a person has blood that is too dilute, less ADH is released, fewer aquaporins are inserted into the collecting duct, and ultimately, more water stays in the filtrate, producing a dilute urine pale in color. Urine dark in color means you might be dehydrated, and your kidneys are working to retain water. Colorless urine could mean you might be overhydrated, and your kidneys are working to excrete excess water. So what's the perfect color? A nice pale yellow, like straw or lemonade, indicates your body is well hydrated and osmoregulation is functioning properly. Finally, let's look at how blood flow to organs changes depending on the body's activity. In order for the kidneys to do their job, blood flow needs to be directed toward the kidneys. But our bodies can actually change the flow of blood to certain organs using vasoconstriction and vasodilation. This occurs in the arterioles, or the blood vessels that serve an organ. To increase blood flow to an organ, vasodilation will occur. The muscle around the arterioles will relax, causing the widening of the lumen seen here, and therefore increased blood flow to those tissues. To reduce blood flow to an organ, vasoconstriction will occur. The muscles around the arterioles will contract, narrowing the lumen, as seen here, and restricting blood flow. Here we can see some contrasting patterns of blood distribution when the body is undergoing different activities. During sleep, the body is in a state of rest and repair. Blood flow shifts toward internal organs involved in maintenance functions. The supply to the brain remains fairly high to support neural activity during sleep cycles and possibly to increase the rate of removal of toxins from the brain tissues. Blood flow to skeletal muscles is fairly low since muscles are inactive. Blood flow to the digestive system varies depending on the presence of food in the gut. If food is present, blood flow will increase. If the body is in a period of fasting, blood flow will be reduced. And blood flow to the kidneys is low, avoiding the need for urination throughout the night. In a resting but awake state, such as sitting or light reading, blood flow is distributed relatively evenly with moderate demands across body systems. The brain maintains a steady blood supply to support mental activity. To the skeletal muscle, blood flow is moderate, higher than during sleep, but not elevated like during physical activity. Blood flow to the digestive system varies, again depending on the presence of food in the gut. The kidneys will receive high blood flow to continue filtering and regulating blood composition. And can you make any guesses about what will happen to blood flow during vigorous exercise? During intense physical activity, blood flow is redistributed to meet high metabolic demands of active muscles. Blood flow to the brain remains high. Blood flow to skeletal muscles is high to supply oxygen and nutrients and remove waste. The flow to the digestive system is low as blood is diverted away from digestion toward muscles. And blood flow to kidneys is low, temporarily lowering filtration as more blood is directed toward muscles and skin for thermoregulation.